Welcome to Module 1, Lesson 1 of your Professional Diploma in Graphic Design with Shaw Academy. Thank you so much for choosing to study with me, Annerie du Plessis, as well as Shaw Academy. I'm super excited to share all my knowledge with you, and I'm sure that you will enjoy this lesson as much as I love educating and designing. Let's kick off with an interesting fact. Did you know the graphic design industry unveils numerous opportunities for self-employment? This means that you can make an income from your home or office if you prefer, with very little overhead costs. We live and work in a digital age, and this makes things so much easier. We can connect with one another on numerous levels and ways, so why not use this as an opportunity to grow your business? So, just to give you some background on who I am, as I'm sure that you would like to know that you're in good hands. As mentioned, my name is Annerie du Plessis, and I've been a graphic designer for over a decade now. I also have 10 years lecturing experience. I believe that design is not simply a matter of making something beautiful, but rather a way to help solve problems visually. I would like to challenge you to be on the constant lookout to see if you can make tasks more interesting, convenient, and easier to understand by utilizing the ability and skills you will take away from this course. A fun but slightly weird fact about me is that I have a huge interest in spiders and snakes. Having said all this, let's get into some housekeeping. I will try and keep it as succinct as possible, as I'm sure that you are excited to dig into your first lesson. If you would like to make use of the app to access our courses on either your phone or tablet, you can simply download it via the app or Play Store. You will be able to allow notifications in order to get reminders of our courses. I would suggest you do this to make sure you stay updated with all your lessons. Once the app is downloaded, you will notice a large countdown timer at the top to indicate when your next lesson will start. Alternatively, you can simply click on courses at the bottom center to provide you with much more information on your current enrolled course. If it does happen that you miss a lesson, do not panic, as you can simply go back and watch the recording by pressing the big red button. We do not want you to miss out, so have made all efforts for you to access these lessons anytime, anywhere. And that's exactly why you can either access our lessons from either your computer or smartphone. If you're using a computer, you can simply go to our website www.shawacademy.com and click on Login. Once logged in, you will be directed to our members area where you will be able to click on My Courses. It will indicate when your next class will start, and you can simply click on the Join Class option to access your lesson. Clicking on Course Page will direct you to all the information regarding your course. You will be able to access your courses, assignments, and additional information from here. If it does happen that you need to reschedule your lesson, you can simply do so by changing the course date and time, and you will be able to watch a recording by clicking on the green Watch Recording button. By clicking Add to Calendar, you will be able to sync these times with your Google Calendar or any other digital calendar service you are making use of, ensuring that you don't miss out on any of the action. Giving you a brief breakdown, we will start off with Lesson 1 of our first module. Each lesson is about 45 minutes, and we will have 2 lessons per week. It is therefore very important to attend every lesson, as you might miss some valuable information. Our Module 1 outline is the Introduction to Graphic Design. We will start off with Lesson 1, which is all about the what, where, when, and why. What I mean by this is that we will look at how obvious design is in our daily lives without us even realizing it. The elements of design will be identified next, and from there we will move on to a brief overview of the history of design. I managed to cram 17,000 years worth of history in one lesson. Then we will list examples of the type of designers we find in the industry, and I will end off with some tips to create effective designs, and also give you an introduction to the very powerful Adobe Illustrator, which we will learn in week 2. Lesson 2 is about the very important elements and principles of design. Graphic design is all about breaking the rules, but in order for us to do this, we will need to know and understand these rules first. Next week in Lesson 3, we will look at the design cycle and steps to create effective designs. And Lesson 4 is your introduction to Adobe Illustrator. Here we will discuss the difference between the major types of images. During week 3, we will start with lesson 5, which entails the basics of logo designing, and we will even learn to create our very first logo. Lesson 6 is an introduction to Adobe Photoshop, and I will teach you some awesome photo manipulation techniques. Our last week of Module 1 starts off with Lesson 7, where we will design a movie poster using Adobe Photoshop. I will end off Module 1 with an introduction to Adobe InDesign and getting your files print ready. Since we believe in making our courses as accessible and interactive as possible, we understand and know that you will have a lot of questions during your lessons. I would like you to meet Morpheus, Shaw Academy's very own artificial intelligence bot. Morpheus is here to assist you in answering your questions, and if you would like, you can even ask your classmates. I encourage you to interact with your class as it is a good way to learn from each other. With all my years of lecturing experience, I've come to understand that the best way to learn is to interact. So don't be scared to ask questions, as we all are here to learn. Please remember to rate your interaction with Morpheus at the end of this lesson to help us improve our answers, and since Morpheus is an AI bot, he will actually learn from your ratings and become even more intelligent. If at the end you still don't get the answer you want, please send me an email at support@shawacademy.com and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Let's kick off with some practical experience. I want you to look around you, wherever you are. You are probably sitting at your home or office desk. Perhaps you're in a cafe, or you might even be lying on your bed or on a couch. The fact of the matter is that irrespective of where you are, there will definitely be signs of graphic design around you. It has become such a part of our daily lives, we don't always notice it. Do you have a cup of coffee on your desk? Do you see the print on it? This was created by a graphic designer. You might be snacking on something that came in some form of packaging. The label or design on this package was also created by a graphic designer. Even the logo on your device you're viewing this lesson on was also created by a graphic designer. Graphic design is an extremely wide industry, and therefore it is important to understand what graphic design is. So, what then is graphic design? If we can define graphic design, we can also refer to it as a form of visual communication. This means that a graphic designer uses visuals consisting of illustrations, text or typography, and also photographs to communicate to a target audience visually. Let's have a look at some practical examples. I will show you an image, and you simply need to identify where graphic design is visible on this image. Looking at this image of a street in Montreal, Canada, where can you spot graphic design? How many signs of graphic design can you identify? I will give you some time to think, and you can simply type the number of designs you think is visible into Morpheus' text box. I managed to get 12. Perhaps there's more examples, and I might have even missed some of the examples. Let's see how I correlate with the score you got. The signs at the top of the two shops are both a form of graphic design. Next, we have a Coke sign on the front door and also the notice on the wall at the bottom right. We have the window display on the shop front and the contact details underneath that. We have the shop signs of the shops on the right. Actually, there are two shops and also some form of design in the shop's window. At the shop in the front, you will notice the shop number, and there's even a no smoking sign in the second shop window. In front of the first shop, you will see a blue parking tag as well. We can even go as far and say that the graffiti on the right wall is also some form of graphic design. This photo of a mall in Romania also has quite a lot of graphic design. It is there to aid people in understanding the setting around them. How many forms of graphic design can you identify here? You can simply type your number again into Morpheus' text box. I counted 8, but I'm sure that if we zoom in on this image, we might even find more examples. Let me show you where I identified the forms of graphic design. We have signs at the top right of the image that will indicate the location of a restroom or parking. The logos at the shops will also help the shopper identify whether this is a shop that they will be interested in. The branding on the seats in the center of the hallway with photographs and text to advertise a brand or sports star is also a form of graphic design. Moving over to Times Square, New York. How many graphic design elements can you identify here? Again, simply type your answer into Morpheus's text box. I'm only joking, you really don't have to type your answer. It would take up the whole lesson if we had to identify all signs of graphic design on this image. I will spare you the counting and just say that this image literally booms with all forms of design. If you can identify any form of illustration, photograph, or text, or even a combination of these three elements, chances are that it is graphic design. Did you know that even in your home you will find graphic design in probably every room? How many forms of graphic design can you identify here? I will give you some time to type your answer into Morpheus's text box again. I have identified 5. Let's have a look. From the designs and icons on your phone or even computer screen, to the pattern design on your pillows, couch, and even your carpet. Even the design of the wallpaper was done by some type of graphic designer. We also have the teacup on the table at the right with the rim on its edge. That is also a form of graphic design. We use all these elements in a clever way to help solve one problem: to communicate effectively. This means that if the design you created using all these elements, photographs, illustrations, and text, does not communicate effectively, irrespective of how interesting or aesthetically pleasing it may seem, your task as a designer is not done. Graphic design is there to make our everyday lives more convenient and hassle-free without us even realizing it. Thus, we would like to say that good design is transparent or invisible, since we do not even realize it. If you see yourself as being practical and being able to identify and solve problems, I'm excited to tell you that this course is cut out just for you. In short, we as graphic designers are actually creative problem solvers. Now, you might still think that you are not artistic enough. Well, I have some great news for you. Graphic design is so much more than simply being artistic. As I've mentioned, good design is transparent or invisible. It is there to make our everyday lives more convenient and hassle-free without us even realizing it. I would like you to consider how design has impacted you on a daily basis. A very simple traffic icon's purpose is to direct you as quickly as possible. These icons are even universal, meaning that almost anyone, irrespective of their language or cultural background, will be able to understand these icons. Considering that we have multiple students from across the world that speak various languages, I'm confident in saying that all of you would be able to recognize most, if not all, of these symbols. Now that you have a better understanding of graphic design, can you imagine how the world would function without the use of visual communication? Having the ability to understand visual communication helps us navigate through life on a daily basis. Think about the ability to read a map or to understand an infographic. What about viewing a movie poster? The fact that we are visual beings and would much rather prefer to view designs at a glimpse before we decide to continue reading makes our task as graphic designers so much more important. The basic building blocks of design are referred to as the design elements. We will look into more detail at the elements in Lesson 2, but to put things into more perspective for you, I would like to introduce these elements to you for now. The elements of design consist out of space, line, shape, size, texture, value, and color. All and any designs you have ever witnessed consist out of a combination of these elements. Let's have a look at some examples. I would like you to look at the wording and provide me with a number. On a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is poor and 5 is excellent, how memorable do you think the wording is? It serves its purpose, right? It communicates a message. But is there a way we can make this more interesting? I am sure that this does not really captivate you at the moment. Or does it? Why not add some elements in order to make this more appealing? I will start off by simply breaking the sentence apart. The element that comes to play here is space. It immediately creates the illusion of reading less. Space also has the power to enhance certain elements. By adding another element, we can make the text even more interesting. What about size? Size helps to create emphasis, and by changing the text size, you immediately know where to look first. You also have a general sense of the most important factor in this piece of text. Why not add line? Line has the power to immediately round it off. By adding a simple line or two, the text looks more interesting and might grab your attention even more. We can even change the appearance of the lines to make it even more interesting, as line does not have to be straight, but it can be wavy and even broken up. Let's add some color. Color is another great tool to help create emphasis, but also to determine mood. Color is probably one of the most important elements, and understanding color psychology will aid you a lot when creating designs. We can continue to add elements until we get the desired effect. The more you practice, the better you will get at it. I have now successfully applied a multitude of design elements to create an interesting yet effective design. Again, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is poor and 5 is excellent, how memorable is this wording now? Did you notice that by simply using basic elements as well as typography, we made this piece of text a lot more interesting? 80% of this piece consists purely out of type. Comparing our final result to the original makes you not only realize the importance of the elements of design, but also makes you look at typography in a whole new way. Graphic designers not only use typography to convey a message, but we see it as an element as well, something we can make more interesting to look at. The elements of design might seem quite simple to you, but the process of applying them is what makes a professional designer stand out from an amateur. I would like you to look at actual examples of where the elements of design have been applied effectively. The exhibition poster on the left consists out of 2 of the 3 visuals we referred to earlier. We have illustrations as well as text. Can you identify any of the design elements I've just introduced to you? Yes, we have space, line, shape, size, texture, as well as color visible in this composition. This billboard by design agency Doohickey includes all 3 visuals: photography, illustrations, as well as text. As for the design elements, we have space, line, shape, size, that's a big burger, texture. On the actual photograph of the burger, you can see texture, value, as well as a plethora of colors. The Google logo is another great example of graphic design. In terms of visuals, it consists out of text. The text in this logo is actually a form of illustration as well, and we might even add illustration too. With regards to the elements, we have space, line, all type actually consists out of line, shape, as well as color. By the way, have you ever tried to Google the word Google backwards? Please don't do this now, rather do it after the lesson. Just make a note on this. The layout of a magazine is another good example of graphic design. Visuals included in this example are photography, illustrations, as well as text. The design elements featured in this example are space, line, shape, size, texture, value, as well as color. Do you like history? You can simply type in Y for yes and N for no, or D for it depends on what type of history. Since most of you said either depends or no, I hope that you will be fascinated by history after this lesson. To fully understand graphic design, it is important to look back at its origin. I personally love history, and I promise to do my best in making this as interesting and fascinating as possible. Why is the history of design so important that I need to work it into a lesson? Before we get into history, do you fully understand the impact design history had on society? Well, I believe that one of the most important reasons is the fact that history helps us in making connections. Understanding your past allows you to connect it to your future. History also creates awareness and understanding, and it helps you to gain insight into different cultures that you might not be familiar with. An example would be a simple invention that we take for granted known as the book. In saying this, I'm actually referring to the shape of a book. Before the advent of books, which were referred to as codices back in the Middle Ages, people used to make use of scrolls and stone or clay tablets. Both these options were quite impractical and difficult to carry around, so the codex was born. Another such fact that will make you fascinated by history is the invention of the printing press in 1450 by Johannes Gutenberg from Germany. Why is the invention of the printing press so important? Well, if it weren't for Johannes Gutenberg, we would all still probably be illiterate. That is assuming nobody else came up with a similar invention. The printing press had such an impact that before its invention, society had only an upper and lower class. After the invention of the printing press, it allowed thousands of people the opportunity to become literate and thus creating a middle class in Europe. It is obviously impossible to cram the history of design into one timeline. Never mind one lesson. But I will at least identify and briefly discuss some of the more important events that altered the course of design. We will start way back in 15,000 BC. During the prehistoric times, around 20,000 to 15,000 BC, it is believed that the Lascaux paintings in France were created. There are over 600 paintings covering the ceilings and walls of these caves. What these paintings have in common with graphic design is the fact that we believe this might be the apex of visual communication, where humans started to communicate visually in order to give them some form of power over these creatures, since they mostly lived as hunter-gatherers. It is also a means to preserve a time in history as well as memories. In about 3200 BC, the Sumerians settled in Mesopotamia, which is known as Iraq now, from their nomad and restless wanderings. The fact that the Sumerians settled probably made them aware of other skills and tools. One such skill is writing, which is a form of visual communication, of course. The first form of writing was known as cuneiform, and shortly thereafter, the invention of writing hieroglyphs was invented by the Egyptians. Skip over 4,000 years and some major inventions in between as well, we find ourselves in the Middle Ages in 1450, where Johannes Gutenberg, a goldsmith, invented the printing press, which was inspired by combining a woodblock printing created by the Chinese in 220 AD, as well as a wine press and movable type. This invention of the printing press helped the spread of information quickly and accurately, and as mentioned, helped civilization to become literate. Have you ever heard of Bauhaus, and do you know what it is? Simply type Y for yes or N for no. If you didn't, you will be surprised as to how important the Bauhaus movement is in all aspects of design. So we have now skipped over 500 years later and find ourselves at the Bauhaus movement. What makes the Bauhaus art school, situated in Germany, so significant is the fact that it operated from 1919 until just before the Second World War, for only a really short period of 14 years. However, this art school had an enormous impact on modern design. Its influence reached all forms of design and art, from architecture to graphic design. Bauhaus is the epitome of form follows function. And its founder, Walter Gropius, German architect, believed art and design could be brought to anyone by making everyday objects more interesting and functional. Its influence can still be seen today as it created the gateway for modern design. On 24 January 1984, Steve Jobs introduced the very first Apple Macintosh computer. Why is this invention so significant? Well, the Apple Macintosh was the first personal computer to popularize the use of a mouse as well as a graphical user interface. We all know what a computer mouse is and can almost not imagine using a computer without a mouse. But to put things into more perspective, a graphical user interface is a way of interacting visually with a computer, making use of icons, menus, and folders, and simply clicking and moving items around with your mouse. Basically, exactly how we make use of computers today. In 1987, Illustrator was commercialized and was initially an in-house font development software. Today, we use Adobe Illustrator for the creation of logos, illustrations, and for typesetting in the form of vector images. We will get into more detail regarding vector and raster images at a later stage. Brothers Thomas and John Knoll created Adobe Photoshop in 1987, and Adobe purchased the license for Photoshop in 1988. In 1990, Photoshop was released for Macintosh exclusively, but in 1993, it got released for Microsoft Windows as well. Photoshop is a photo manipulation program allowing its users to create digital art in raster format. We will start to make use of Photoshop later in this course. Quark, which is the opposition to Adobe at the time, released a very powerful feature-rich Quark Express, which is a layout and design software. Quark Express dominated at the time, and this motivated Adobe to create InDesign. InDesign was released in 1999 and was the first native Mac operating system desktop publishing software. Adobe InDesign is the software that combines all your Photoshop and Illustrator created artwork into one document, and in recent years have great ability in creating interactive PDF documents as well. Of these three programs, InDesign is probably my favorite. This was 17,000 years of design history crammed into a couple of minutes. I will be thrilled if you took some interesting facts from this, as I don't think we always appreciate history and the way it formed the present. Please note that I have not mentioned all of the historical facts and that this was merely the tip of the iceberg. I would like to move on to the top of graphic design careers. But before I do, I would like you to answer the following question. Why did you enroll for this course specifically? Do you consider becoming self-employed? Or perhaps you are looking at changing careers? Do you simply think that design is interesting and would love to do it in your spare time? Or do you see it as an opportunity to grow in your current role? Perhaps you're not really sure and wanted to check it out before making a decision. Or you even might have a totally different reason. Either way, you can simply type A, B, C, D, or E into Morpheus's text box to give me an indication on why you are doing this course. Most of you have chosen either A or B. But did you know that graphic design is actually a very wide field and we have a variety of different designers? What all these options have in common is the fact that you need a computer and software to start off with. The industry standard is the Adobe package, which I have briefly introduced to you in our history section. The three programs we mentioned, Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign, we like to refer to as the Holy Trinity when it comes to graphic design. These are the three must-know programs any designer should be familiar with, as they work in mutual relationship with one another. What is the difference? As you continue with this course and get practical experience, you will get to understand these programs better. In short, Adobe Illustrator is a vector-based program, and like the name implies, is used to create illustrations. Examples are logos, corporate identities, posters, and basically anything you can digitally draw on the computer. The amazing thing about vector illustrations is that they never lose quality and are very small in file size, meaning that they don't take up a lot of space on your computer. Photoshop, on the other hand, is a photo manipulation program used not only by graphic designers, but also photographers, animators, fine artists, and other creative industry careers. You will make use of Photoshop to enhance or manipulate photographs, and it also has the ability to create posters and other artwork. The difference in Photoshop is that it delivers content in raster format and not vector format like Illustrator does. Raster format means that the image consists out of pixels. InDesign, which you know is my favorite, is a layout-based program and mostly used for the creation of books, magazines, and e-publications. It has the ability to combine all your Illustrator and Photoshop artwork into one document. Illustrator has great ability in creating interactivity into e-publications and interactive PDF documents, making these documents really user-friendly for the end user to manage. Graphic design even correlates with other careers, and sometimes it can be the stepping stone into a different type of design career. For now, however, we will look at the various graphic design careers and also the skill set needed to become these designers. I have stumbled across an interesting article in which Emily Gurevich explains the type of roles. You can view the link in the course content provided. The types of graphic designers that we will look into are an advertising designer, environmental designer, publication designer, motion designer, corporate designer, web designer, as well as a packaging designer. The first type of designer is an advertising designer. This is probably the most well-known and common form of graphic design careers, as it entails print media ranging from brochures to magazines, as well as digital design and social media design. The skill set needed for this type of career would be the use of Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, as well as InDesign. You will also need to make use of bulk email software like MailChimp or Email on Asset. Examples of what you will be able to do as an advertising designer are magazines and newspapers, brochure design, email newsletters, social media graphics, as well as infographics. The next type of designer is known as an environmental designer. Environmental designers would consider architecture and the environment to make spaces and places more attractive and efficient for people to move around in. It entails aspects and knowledge of architecture, interior design, industrial design, as well as landscaping. The skill set needed for this type of career would be the use of Adobe Illustrator and also Photoshop. These designers might also make use of 3D CAD software like AutoCAD or Maya to help their clients visualize the end result before actually constructing it. Alternatively, they can simply use a photograph of the existing space and use Photoshop to add the artwork. Examples include exhibition and event spaces, mural artwork, signage, which nowadays can also be digital, office branding, as well as stadium and concert branding. As you would have noticed, some of these design careers tend to overlap when it comes to skill. Like an advertising designer, publication designers focus on publications like magazines and newspapers. More recently, publication designers have focused on a more digital approach, including e-publications and digital magazines. The skill set needed for this type of career would be the use of Illustrator, Photoshop, as well as InDesign. Examples include books, we have ebooks or e-publications, magazines and newspapers, catalogs, as well as menu design. Motion design has gained a lot of popularity during the last decade due to technological advancements. A motion designer takes design elements and creates the illusion of movement with these elements. A very popular program to create these movements are Adobe After Effects. You, however, need to understand and learn the basics of design first before learning this program. The skill set needed for this type of career would be the use of Illustrator, Photoshop, as well as more animated and motion-based software like After Effects and Maya. This is a great way to tell a story and is being used in TV advertisements, movie intros, text animation, apps and video games, to mention only a few. A company's brand needs to communicate effectively and quickly. A corporate designer's role is to aid the company in creating a successful brand that communicates successfully to its target audience. You will need to have a great understanding of the design elements and principles, which we will discuss later in this course. The skill set needed for this type of career would be the use of Illustrator, Photoshop, as well as InDesign, but mostly Adobe Illustrator, as it allows you to create illustrations including logos and corporate identities. Examples include logo design, business card design, letterhead design, as well as stationery. A web designer not only needs to be able to create an effective website, but will also need to understand how to make this website appealing. Coding lies at the back end of being a web designer. The skill set needed for this type of career would obviously be web coding, but on top of that, web designers will also need to make use of Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, along with web designing software like Adobe Dreamweaver, or even web-based applications like WordPress. Examples are the various websites you visit when browsing the internet. The last type of designer we are discussing is a packaging designer. Packaging designers not only need to look at the aesthetics of a package, but will also need to consider and understand which material is best to use for the given package. Walking through a grocery store, you will realize that almost every item is in some sort of package. Most of the times, it is the package that convinces us to buy a certain product over its rival. Hence, packaging design's role is to convince its audience without them even realizing it. The skill set needed for this type of career would be the use of Illustrator, Photoshop, and perhaps also some InDesign. Next time you're out shopping, be more attentive to the type of packaging you see on the shelves of grocery stores. I have a surprise for you, and I know that these design tips will really help you a lot. You can make use of these tips using almost any program, from Microsoft Word and PowerPoint to the more powerful Adobe package, so be sure to make notes. You will be amazed as to how far these simple tips will aid you in creating effective designs. The first tip that I would like to share is to limit your typefaces to only 2. If you use too many typefaces, it will distract from your original message and your audience will focus more on the type used than the actual message. With this said, it is also a good idea to combine 2 contrasting typefaces. One interesting display typeface for headings and a transparent typeface for body copy. Looking at this example on the right, it is quite easy to see that too many typefaces do not communicate effectively. All 4 of these typefaces compete equally for attention, and you don't know where to look first. This option, however, communicates way more effectively. It is the exact same message presented differently. The background also does not fight for attention, but helps your text to stand out. The second tip is one that a lot of beginners tend to fear: white space. White space is an element that should be utilized and not filled. Don't be scared of large open spaces. Instead, have your design elements fit in nicely with your white space. White space helps to create emphasis, and a lack of white space actually creates chaos and visual disturbance. The second example is way more relaxing on the eye and communicates the message way more effectively. There is actually no excuse to warp or distort a picture. Don't warp your photos under any circumstances. Nothing says amateur as much as a distorted or warped photograph. There is a simple way to avoid this, and this technique works in almost all programs. If you simply hold down the Shift key and drag one of the corners of your design, you should retain its proportions. The first key you should press when resizing is Shift, and the last key to release is also Shift. Releasing it too early will result in image distortion. Pixelation is the process of forcing a too small image or very low quality image into your design. Even if you think the image looks perfect, if it pixelates, don't use it under any circumstances. Instead, rather get a higher quality image. There are a couple of websites where you can download good quality images for free. So instead, make use of them. Please just read the fine print, as you will most of the times need to credit these images. You got it for free after all, so the least you can do is to give credit where it's due. Pixabay and Freepik are very popular stock websites where there are some great content you can download for free. Our last tip is to make use of contrast. Be careful of little contrast, especially when it comes to text. The most important function for text is to be legible, so contrast by using either size or color or even both is key. Having said all this, please be careful of using too vibrant colors on top of each other as well, as this can exhaust your viewer. As with this example, reading the content is a lot easier. Don't force poor design onto your viewer. I would like to leave you with a brief introduction to Adobe Illustrator to get you all excited for what's lying ahead. You might feel intimidated, but there are some simple tools that will make this a lot easier. Of course, practice makes perfect, but at least it is a fun way to learn these programs. So let's get into it. Okay, so I've opened up Illustrator. Just note that this demo is here to show you the capabilities of Illustrator. We're going to learn Illustrator step by step in a later lesson. I've previously created this type of illustration with the use of only type, if you can see. So you remember when we said in the previous, one of the previous sections, that we can actually use type to design with. And I want you to look at type differently from now on. It's not only there to communicate a message, but we can make it actually very interesting. To do this, I simply took the type tool, which is T for shortcut, if you're a shortcut type of person like me. And I type in the word graphic design. Oh, all caps. Graphic design. Okay. To resize, there's always more than one way. Normally 3 ways to do something in Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. So if someone tells you, hey, you're doing this wrong, this is the way you should do it, remember there's more than one way, so you're not technically doing it wrong. You can either resize the type by typing in the size of the point size or the font size here, or I can hold in Shift, use my selection or move tool, and drag the corner. Remember, Shift retains the proportions, okay? Once I'm happy with my size, I'm going to cut through the type now. To do this, I'm going to use the line tool in conjunction with the shape builder tool. So click, I want a diagonal line, drag through my type, get the nice line that I want, happy with that. Currently, if you look on the left-hand panel, you'll see that the full of my line and the stroke both are set to transparent. There's nothing there. If it's got a red diagonal line, it means it's transparent. I'm fine with that because I'm only going to use this line to indicate where I'm going to cut my layer or my type. But before I can cut my type, you will see that I won't be able to cut it because it's still in type form. I need to convert it to outlines first. To do that, select your type and you can go to Object, Type, and click on Create Outlines. Alternatively, again, if you're a shortcut person like me, I like to use shortcuts and you can press Ctrl-Shift-O or Command-Shift-O if you use a Mac. Then we're going to select everything on this piece that I've just created. So clicking and dragging with the selection tool, make sure that you overlap so that you've got everything selected. I have selected the type, which is converted to outlines now, as well as the line, the diagonal line, which I'm going to use to cut out. I'm going to go over to my shape builder tool, Shift-M for shortcut, and select all the top parts of the type. And also I'm going to leave the bottom part because if I cut the top part, it's obviously going to separate itself from the bottom part. So I'm going to hold in Shift. You can click and drag, but it's going to remove all your inside parts of the letters. You see there, we don't want that. Okay, Control-Z to undo. And select everything again. Where's my shape builder? hold in Shift and click on all these. You don't actually need to hold in Shift, apologies. Just so that we're going to cut the top part of our type and separate it from the bottom part. Okay, nothing's happened. Why is this? Well, we need to ungroup all of this first. So I'm going to select my type again, right click, ungroup, deselect it. If you go and you select it again, you will see that each part of this is now on its separate layer or separate. Okay, click and drag to select only the top part. And remember that part of the G. Oh, it didn't cut through. Let me just see there. Oh, why did it not cut through there? I forgot to cut it. Quickly going to cut it again. Voila, as easy as that. Okay, now I need to group that with the rest of the top letters. Shift, Control, G for group or right click group. Now that I've got all of this grouped, I can simply use the arrow keys on my keyboard to separate them. Do you see how cool that is? You can click and drag around as well, but that's way too far. And yeah, get the desired effect you want. Not too much. We still want to read this, obviously. Then the next tool I'm going to show you is the appearance panel. And under the appearance panel, we're going to click on the blending mode, which is really cool. So again, I need to select everything that I'm working on now. Otherwise, it's not going to add the effect. On the right-hand panel, you'll see the circle with a dashed line. It's called the appearance panel. I'm going to click on it, click on opacity, and here where it says normal, this is the blending mode. I'm going to change my blending mode to multiply. And like the name implies, it's going to blend shapes and layers together. Nothing's going to happen now because they are not overlapping. But as soon as I have overlapping shapes and illustrations, you will actually start to see this effect we have here at the top. Okay. Next, I'm going to change the color. Selecting my top part, I'm going to change it to blue like we have here at the top. And the bottom part, oh, I still need to group this. Make sure you select everything there. Is that part also selected? Oh, holding Shift, apologies. Click. Shift. Oh, it is selected. Okay. And let's change that to yellow. Or red. Ready color. Okay. Nothing's happened because nothing's overlaying. Okay. But they need to overlap. I'm going to select my top part again and copy and paste it. You can either go to edit, copy and edit, paste. Or if you're like me, Control C, Control V. Love to do that. And we need to change the color. Otherwise we won't see the effect. I'm going to change it to a dark purple or maybe a red color. Okay, how cool is that? And by using the arrow keys, just move it around so that they overlap slightly more. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to read. Same with the bottom part. Select all of them. See, I haven't grouped them. Control G to group. Then again, Control C and Control V, or Command C and Command V for Mac users to copy and paste. I'm going to change the color to blue. Okay. Overlap. And we have this awesome effect. This is what the blending modes does. Maybe change the color to green or yellow. And as easy as that, we have actually designed with type. I really hope that you enjoyed this demo and that this lesson made you excited to come back next time. I'm also sure that you would like to know how you will be able to get a hold of Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, as well as InDesign. You can download the trial version for 7 days in order to explore these programs. However, I have some really great news for you. Since Shaw Academy has a partnership with Adobe, we are able to extend your Photoshop trial to a full 30 days. This is the length of the first module. So you will be able to practice on Photoshop specifically for the whole of Module 1. In order to activate this 30-day trial of Photoshop, I will provide you with details in Lesson 2, so do come back next time. In the meantime, simply visit Adobe's website to get an idea on how these programs work. Also make a note that I will tell you when to download these programs so that you will be able to utilize the full 7-day trial. You can make a note that in week 2, we will work in Illustrator. Week 3, we will work in Photoshop. And in week 4, we will work in InDesign. As you've probably noticed, visual communication is not simply about the aesthetics, but also the functionality as well. If I were to tell you that you can only take away one tip on this lesson, it would be to know that form follows function. This means that the function is more important than the actual form of a design, since if it does not fulfill its function, it is actually useless. Luckily, however, this is only the start of things, and we will learn to apply both effective function as well as form, and this is why I gave you these tips. You would have also noticed that all the design careers we mentioned make use of almost all 3 of these programs. Thus, these 3 programs, Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign, are the 3 programs that every designer should know. Knowing these 3 programs will open many other doors for you, and you can then enhance your skill by learning other programs that will complement your existing knowledge. These 3 programs are the fundamentals of graphic design as a career. With that being said, the foundation of good, effective design will be discussed in our next lesson. We refer to this foundation as the elements, which we briefly discussed today, as well as the principles of design, and they form the basic building blocks of any type of design. The elements are the physical things on a design and include space, line, shape, size, texture, value, and color. The principles are how we apply these physical things, and they include focal point, contrast, balance, movement, pattern, unity, as well as the theory of Gestalt. Combining your elements and principles in a successful way will result in a visual unity to not only intrigue, but also engage your audience. If you can successfully apply your elements and principles of design, you are halfway there. On top of it all, these elements and principles can be applied in all areas of design, from interior design to architecture and even fashion. In the following lessons, starting from lesson 3 specifically, we will also get to learn how to use these programs we have discussed earlier, and how to apply our elements and principles when using these programs. One tip I will give you is that when it comes to design, we love to break the rules. After all, this is how most new designs and inventions were formed. There is, however, one but. Only break these rules if you know what you are doing. I would like to end off today's lesson with a recap on what we did. We looked at what graphic design is and how it affects our current lives. We then moved over to the brief introduction to the elements of design and looked at how to practically apply these elements. We managed to cram 17,000 years worth of history into a couple of minutes and also focused on the various types of designers we get in the industry today. I added bonus insight at the end of this lesson in the form of 5 tips for effective design, which can be applied using any program you currently have access to. And remember, next time you go out, see if you can identify any graphic design elements around you. I really hope that you enjoyed this lesson and can guarantee you that these lessons will only become even more fun, especially as we start to put into practice what we have learned. Congratulations on completing your very first lesson. I would like you to send any feedback or suggestions, since by doing so, we can only improve our courses. You can send your email to support@shawacademy.com. Remember to rate this lesson at the end. 1 will mean that you didn't like it at all, whereas a 10 will mean that you really enjoyed it. I want to thank each and every one of you so much for joining me in this lesson. I really hope that you enjoyed it. See you next time and have a fabulous day.